Hello, this is Weird Reddit 111. Thank you for watching my content. It's cherished in my heart that you took the time to watch my video. I ask viewers to please like, share, subscribe, and comment. Also, please help the channel to grow by subscribing, as our goal is to reach 1,000 subscribers. The first few stories are from a Reddit user named Ademnus. Enjoy. One day, while standing in the living room of a house I'd rented with friends, I heard my roommate bound down the stairs as he usually did and run into the kitchen, slide across the floor, and open the fridge. Being young then too, I turned around to face the open kitchen to tell him to quit running like a little kid in the house and was looking at an empty kitchen. A second later, he bounded down the stairs, ran into the kitchen, slid across the floor, and opened the fridge. When he turned around, he said, "Whoa, what the fuck's wrong?" Because I must have been pale as a sheet. When I was a child, I had a record player. Yes, I'm old. And I used to listen to Kiss. Yes, I'm old and I was a lame kid. Anyway, as kids poorly handled records tended to do, my favorite albums developed scratches that caused the needle to skip here or there. One of the songs always had a skip in the same spot, and I got used to it. Fast forward to a year ago. Out of nostalgia, I bought and downloaded the song from Amazon, wanting to walk down memory lane. I was listening to it with a friend, and then the song skipped in the same spot, and my friend heard it as well. I know she did because when I heard it, I went berserk and demanded she tell me what she heard, if anything at all, to check my own sanity. She heard it. I replayed it. The skip was gone. This is a story that my cousins and I like to tell. When I was around 6 or 7 years old, my uncle, who had just visited from the Philippines, showed us a doll that sang the Itsy Bitsy Spider when you pressed a button on her hand. He brought it with the intention that one of my girl cousins might want it. But in all honesty, we all thought the doll was creepy, especially since it sang the song in a slow, ominous manner. Not knowing what to do with it, we took out the batteries and threw it back in the box that my uncle had put it in. Right after we left the room, all we heard was a muffled, "The itsy bitsy spider climbed up the water spout. Down came the rain and washed the spider out." The doll was still singing without fucking batteries. No one was in the room at the time, which means no one could have replaced the batteries nor pressed the button on her hand. It still baffles us to this day. Following the eerie tale of the singing doll, let me take you back to another baffling incident from my childhood. This one happened when I was about 10 years old. Picture this: a sunny afternoon, me playing fetch with my dog in our spacious backyard. Suddenly, my dog bolts towards the fence in pursuit of the ball. I watch as he leaps, and in the blink of an eye, he just disappears. I was frozen in shock for a moment, my eyes straining to see if he'd simply jumped over the fence. But there was nothing. I was so scared and confused, I sprinted inside to tell my parents, my heart pounding against my chest. But they dismissed it as a figment of my overactive imagination. Now here's where it gets even weirder. A few hours later, as the sun was setting, I saw him in the backyard again, just sitting there wagging his tail as if he'd never left, as if he hadn't just disappeared into thin air. To this day, I still have no explanation for what happened. Was it a glitch in reality, or simply a trick played by my young mind? I guess we'll never know. But it's one of those stories that stays with you, a reminder of the unexplained mysteries that surround us. Let's keep the momentum going with yet another bizarre incident from my life. This one is a little more recent, but just as mind-boggling. One day, I received a text message from my girlfriend. Nothing unusual, right? But here's the catch. She claimed she didn't send it until an hour later. You must be thinking, maybe it was a network delay or something. But no, I showed her the timestamp on my phone, and it clearly showed that the message was received an hour before she claimed to have sent it. She was just as startled as I was. To prove her point, she showed me her phone, and sure enough, the message was sent an hour later according to her phone. We were both left scratching our heads, trying to make sense of this technological anomaly. Could it be a glitch in the system? Or did I somehow receive a message from the future? It sounds crazy, I know, but till today, we have no explanation for this strange event. It's one of those things that make you question the very fabric of reality, don't they? Phew, after that last story, you'd think nothing could surprise me anymore, right? But brace yourselves, because things are about to get even weirder. This happened a few years ago. I was driving home late one night, the road lit only by the faint yellow glow of the street lamps. Suddenly, I noticed a car in my rearview mirror. It was getting closer and closer, its headlights growing brighter. I remember feeling a bit uneasy, but I shrugged it off, thinking it was just someone in a hurry. But then, in the blink of an eye, the car just vanished. Yes, you heard it right. It just disappeared. One moment it was there, filling my mirror with its blinding lights, and the next, it was gone, as if it had never been there. I remember slamming on the brakes, my heart pounding in my chest. I scanned the road behind me, but there was no sign of the car. I was so scared, I drove home as fast as I could, constantly checking my mirror. To this day, the memory of that night sends chills down my spine. Was it a trick of the light, or did I witness a car disappearing into thin air? I guess we'll never know. Okay, brace yourselves, because this next story is one that still gives me chills. It was a typical Tuesday, and I was just finishing up some work when my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I hadn't seen in years, a number that belonged to a loved one who had passed away. My heart pounded in my chest as I answered the call, half expecting to hear a telemarketer or a wrong number. But no, what I heard was a voice so familiar yet so distant it was that of my deceased loved one. They spoke in soft whispers, saying things only we knew, shared moments only we had experienced. It was surreal to say the least. But then, just as abruptly as it started, the call ended, leaving me in a state of shock and disbelief. Was it a glitch in the system? Or had I really just spoken to a ghost? It was a moment that I'll never forget, a moment that still sends shivers down my spine. And that's the story of the phantom phone call. All right, folks, this next tale is one that still baffles me to this day. When I was a child, I used to play with someone who my parents referred to as my imaginary friend. He was my partner in crime, my confidant, my best friend. We'd spend hours chatting, playing, and even arguing. But the thing is, I never actually saw him. My parents, amused, dismissed it as the innocent imagination of a child. Little did they know that there was more to it than met the eye. Fast forward to several years later, we moved out, and I had almost forgotten about my unseen friend. One day, we got a call from the new occupants of our old house. They had been experiencing strange occurrences, and upon investigating, they found out that the house was, in fact, haunted. I felt a chill run down my spine as I remembered my unseen friend from my childhood days. Was he not a figment of my imagination, but a resident spirit of the house? To this day, I can't shake off the eerie feeling that my childhood friend was more real than anyone had ever imagined. It's a memory that still sends shivers down my spine. And that, dear listeners, is the story of my unseen friend. Brace yourselves, because this next story defies all logic and understanding. It was a day like any other, started with the morning sun and the chirping of birds. I got up, had my coffee, and went about my usual routine. Everything was as normal as it could be, or so I thought. The strange thing happened when I woke up the next morning. As the day unfolded, I realized I had lived this day before. The people I met, the conversations I had, even the news on TV was identical to the previous day. It was as if I was stuck in a loop, living the same day over and over again. I was baffled, scared, and intrigued at the same time. I tried to change a few things, but the day repeated itself with an eerie precision. I was trapped in my own version of Groundhog Day. The déjà vu was too real, too vivid to be a mere coincidence. It was only after what felt like an eternity, the day finally moved forward. I woke up to a new day, new happenings, and a sigh of relief swept over me. To this day, I can't explain what happened, why it happened, or how it happened. It was a day I'll never forget, a day that repeated itself, making me question the very fabric of time and reality. It's a story that still baffles me and sends shivers down my spine every time I think about it. Brace yourselves, because this next tale is one that still haunts me to this day. It was late one night and I was walking down the hallway of my house. The moon was full, casting long, eerie shadows through the windows. Suddenly, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a figure. It was a ghostly apparition, standing ethereally at the end of the hallway. The figure was blurred, but it was unmistakably human, and it seemed to be staring right at me. My heart pounded in my chest as I slowly approached, but as I got closer, the figure dissolved into nothingness. I searched the entire house, but there was no sign of anyone. I was alone. The figure never appeared again, but its image is etched into my memory. It was a sight I'll never forget, a chilling encounter that left me questioning the boundaries between the living and the dead. Every time I pass that hallway, I can't help but remember that ghostly figure and the chill it sent down my spine. It's a story that still gives me goosebumps, a reminder of the inexplicable and the unknown. Prepare yourself for a puzzling encounter in our next story. It was a typical evening, just me, my thoughts, and a book I was engrossed in. I had a cherished bookmark, a silver feather gifted by my grandmother. I always kept it in my book when I wasn't reading. One day I opened my book and the bookmark was gone. I searched every nook and cranny of my house, but it was nowhere to be found. I was baffled and slightly upset as the bookmark held sentimental value. Days turned into weeks, and I eventually gave up my search, accepting it as a lost cause. Then one day, as I opened the book again, there it was. The silver feather bookmark was right there, nestled between the pages as if it had never left. It was a mystery that still baffles me. How did it disappear and then reappear in its original place days later? It's a question I'll never have an answer to, a riddle that adds to the enigma of the unknown. Brace yourself for our final story, an incident that continues to baffle me to this day. It was a normal day, nothing out of the ordinary. I was walking down the same street I had walked 1,000 times before. Suddenly, everything around me started to blur. It was as if the world was spinning faster and I was being left behind. When the blur subsided, I found myself standing in an entirely different era. The buildings, the people, the cars, everything was from a time I had only read about in history books. I was disoriented, yet fascinated. I tried to interact with the people around me, but it was as if I was invisible to them. I walked around, taking in the sights and sounds of this bygone era. Just as suddenly as it had begun, I was yanked back into reality. I found myself standing on the same street, but now everything was back to normal. It was an experience that was both terrifying and intriguing. It was as if I had slipped through the fabric of time, even if it was only for a brief moment. It's an experience I'll never forget, a mystery that adds to the enigma of the unknown.
Story 13 by Reddit user Ratus_Amicus. Have posted this before elsewhere, but here goes. Sorry, this is a long read. I am from Finland, and that's also where these things I'm about to describe to you happened. This was some years ago, pre-smartphone/GPS era. It was the end of the summer and myself and 2 friends were on a camping trip way up in the north, in Lapland. The mosquito season was over, and the weather was cooling down in anticipation of the coming fall. The 3 of us had packed food and gear for a 10-day trek. The car we arrived in had been left at the parking lot of a visitor center. This happened within the premises of the Urho Kekkonen National Park, a 985 square mile stretch of wilderness near the Russian border. The terrain there varies greatly, from treeless and semi-mountainous to dense forest of spruce and pine and dwarf birch. There are lots of swamps. Seeing reindeer is not uncommon, and some nights you might hear wolves in the distance. You can run into a bear or a wolverine in this place, but of course normally they avoid people. We mostly camped in a tent, but some nights we used shelters and simple huts provided for travelers free of charge. The trip had lasted 5 days. We were at the furthest of any kind of civilization we were going to be on that particular outing. Truly in the middle of nowhere, there really is nothing there. There are no villages, towns or industry. The place is a national park after all. Seeing other hikers happened from time to time. You'd see some people in the distance maybe, very rarely would you come face to face with anyone. So, in the middle of our trip, we were camped in a small clearing, woodland extending around us for a considerable distance in all directions. It was already dark. We had eaten our evening meal and all 3 of us were jammed in our only tent. It was a bit cramped, but we fit. We took turns carrying it during the hike. We were just exchanging some jokes and crude humor in the dark, like
guys in their 20s do, about to go to sleep in our sleeping bags. When we quieted down we began to hear it, talking. And the sound of machinery. Given our location, this was profoundly weird. We camped in a tent because there were no huts nearby. Maybe there was another camp somewhere near us? We couldn't quite make out what was being said, but it was a human voice, no doubt about it. But nothing really could explain the sound of heavy machinery. It sounded like an excavator or a tank, something big, powerful, and really not too far away. Combined with the sound of talking, we thought construction yard. But at that time of night, in an unpopulated, protected nature reserve? We got out of our tent. It was cold and pitch black. The campfire had some coals stll glowing. We took out our flashlights. My two buddies have always been a lot braver than me. The sound was clearly coming from the north, maybe half a kilometer away. We thought the construction might be going on behind a small hill some distance away. We could see no lights or anything. We still could not make out what was being said. The speaking-like voice was monotonous, and it was impossible even to say what language was being used. Still sounded a lot like a person speaking though. You may be aware of the sort of spooky phenomenon of hearing a human voice in static? Maybe you've used a blow dryer and been sure someone is talking. Turn it off and it was just something the brain tried to interpret from the steady hum. Maybe it was sort of like that, it's hard to explain. The machinery-like sound continued, not loud, but you could sort of make out the powerful engine, at times accelerating/adding power, at times at idle. My two friends resolved to go find out what was going on. We put our warm clothes back on, donned boots, and I sat next to the dying fire, adding some more wood to it. I would stay at camp while my buddies left to check out this mystery. Construction yard in the middle of nowhere in the Lapland woods. So, there I Saturday, the guys took out their maps, took a compass heading, and left, and I could hear them make their way through the forest, see the light from their flashlights. Then they were gone, the weird sounds continued, unaltered. They were gone 15 minutes, then maybe 30. Then the better part of an hour. It was odd, judging by the volume of the sound. They should have reached it, checked it out, and been back already. I added more firewood, and tried to make out what the person talking was saying, but it was too tinny and obscure. The guys had been away for over 2 hours, I figured they had stayed for coffee with the construction guys or something. Then the sound stopped, just like that. It just ended, all at the same time. The engine sound and the voice both just quit. It was very silent. I waited for another 30 minutes. Very worried now that something had happened, that maybe my friends were lost. Should I go and try to find them? I shouted their names several times, and built the fire pretty big. I was scared shitless when suddenly I saw the flashlights of my friends. Apparently they were returning in a hurry. The guys got back to camp, out of breath. They told me the following: they had followed the sound beyond the small ridge in the distance. There was nothing there, and it seemed like they were not getting any closer to the source of the sounds. They had to stop every now and then, be quiet and listen to it to be able to walk towards it. They walked and stopped like this for some time. Then realized they were not getting any closer. The sounds did not change in volume at all. They decided to go just a bit further several times, when suddenly the sound just stopped like someone pressed a button on a recording. They realized they had been going on for a long time. They were in the middle of the dark woods, alone. They reversed the heading and started back at a brisk pace. Eventually, they saw my big-ass fire from the top of a hill and found their way back. The weird thing is, we seemed to think the sound stopped at different times. They had been gone 5 hours in total. They said the sound stopped at around the 1 hour 15 minutes mark after they left. They then started to head back immediately, return trip taking a bit longer even though they kept a good pace. They apparently wandered around a bit. For me, the sound stopped at the 2-hour mark, just 30 minutes before they returned. We did not sleep that night. Nothing more happened on that trip, and we never found out what the weird construction yard-like sound was about. When we returned to the park's visitor center some 5 days later, we asked around, but no one knew of any ongoing construction taking place in the whole national park area. Been bugging me ever since. That's ALLL folks. Thank you again for watching Weird Reddit. Remember, Weird Reddit 111 is a place that we can all come to ponder about the weird things in the world that's going on. Right, where more people are even experiencing the weird occurrence of seeing the number 1111 everywhere. A lot of people are starting to open their minds to the unexplainable happenings around them. Unable to understand the world around them anymore, wondering, am I the only one seeing this? Am I crazy? We are just awakening to the fact that everyone around us is subject to change like a computer code on a computer. Do we live in the Matrix, or can science explain some of these phenomena away? Please share your own story of your glitch experience in the comments below. Again, please like, share, comment, and subscribe the video and channel so that it reach newer heights. Thank you for watching Weird Reddit 111.